Okay, League of Shadows. So we got another pretty decent trade here between Max and Brian. So Brian gets himself in the mix here, decides to shake things up a little bit with a swap. Don't see him on the trading block too often, so definitely refreshing to see the Gramercy Riffs getting involved here. So in this trade, we have Max giving up Dak Prescott and his first round draft pick in the upcoming draft in 2018, and Brian gives up Doug Martin for the Buccaneers and a round four draft pick in the upcoming draft. And his round four pick is conditional. If Prescott ends up finishing as a top seven quarterback, and Max makes sure um, to specify that seven is the right number here and that he didn't mean eight, because I know we use top eight a lot of times to indicate the starters in those one slot positions like the quarterback. Mainly the quarterback is where we use that term. So Max goes ahead and puts the condition on there for Brian's pick to become a third if Prescott does finish as a top seven quarterback, which it's possible. I mean, it's not a sure thing, but let's look at that conditional aspect of things here really quick. We can go to the reports. We look at our top performers here. And let's go ahead and look at the quarterback ratings here through week 5. Dak is 5th. So if he continues on the path that he's going, that's going to turn into a third round pick there for Max as well. So, good way to shore up a little bit of extra value in the trade, especially when you're giving up a first rounder. It can be good to retain some of that middle to late round value in those picks. We know that we can get good players from those rounds. Past drafts have shown that, but obviously the first round is the surefire round a lot of times to where you're going to get that really breakout talent. The Kareem Hunts, the Dalvin Cooks before his injury. I'm referencing my own players because they're the first ones that come to mind, but of course others have drafted excellent players in the first round as well. So looking at the trade from both sides, Max giving up that first round pick is a pretty bold move, but he's obviously going in on Doug Martin's talents for the rest of the season, barring any additional injury or anything like that. He is really, in a sense, going all in on Doug Martin here, which is, you could say it's bold, but if you look at some of his past years, although he's been inconsistent, he has performed very well. You look at Doug Martin here, and he's had a couple of really great seasons in the past, and if he is able to come off this injury and do well, which he showed that he did in week 5. He came off just fine and was able to have a nice performance there. He had a touchdown, 13 rushes for 74 yards. That's a great yards per carry average, 1 reception. His talent definitely comes in, I think, his shiftiness and his ability to kind of go coast to coast across the field, not coast to coast from end zone to end zone, but he has that type of running back mentality where he's able to not only power his way through with his frame, but also to institute some of that shiftiness to get around the defense and to get
where he's able to not only power his way through with his frame, but also to institute some of that shiftiness to get around the defense
and to get extra yards on those carries. So I think Doug Martin definitely has the ability to be a top running back scorer if he stays healthy. That's the question mark for him because he's battled injuries and everything like that. But you look at his 2012 and 2015 campaigns, that's where he rushed for over 1,400 yards, had 11 touchdowns in 2012, had a receiving touchdown, had 6 touchdowns in 2015, had a receiving touchdown there as well. He's got the potential to produce, and there's also a slightly overlooked advantage here that my fantasy league actually makes mention of. He already had his bye week in week 1 because of Hurricane Irma, so he's actually going to go through the rest of the season without another bye. As we enter these bye weeks, lineups can get very tricky. It can be very difficult to shift your lineup around when your starters are out, so you don't have to worry about that with Doug Martin for the rest of the season. So if Max is trying to make a playoff push here, he is going to be able to rely on having Doug Martin every week, where his other players, his other starting running backs like Ezekiel Elliott, Leonard Fournette, Jay Ajayi, those guys are going to still be going through their bye weeks. Except for Jay Ajayi because he was in the Miami game, so he won't have another bye week either. I believe I'm accurate on that. You can check me on that if you need to. On Brian's side, he obviously gets the first rounder. That's awesome for him. Doug Martin is a guy who he, wasn't able to use for the whole beginning of the season here, and he's still 3-2. So when you look at it that way, it's not really a huge deal to lose him. Let's see what the lineups looked like. I don't know if he left Brian's roster before this weekend or if the trade actually went through after the weekend. Did Brian have him starting, or was he in either starting lineup in week 5? Let's see what happened there. Just checking some of this on the fly just to make sure that we have all our ducks in a row here. Yeah, I can just go to Doug Martin's page. So yeah, he was still on the Gramercy Riffs roster, but he wasn't started. So it was a moot point there for Brian, and he still got the win in week 5. So what's he losing here, really? I mean, he's at 3-2. He's looking pretty good. His team's scoring well. I don't think anybody wants to play against Brian necessarily when his scoring has picked up, every week since, one down week in week 2. He's scored over 200 points in week 5, and he's got some players on his squad. So you definitely don't want to, you definitely don't want to overlook the fact that Doug Martin didn't do anything for his team this year, and he's still in a pretty good position to make a playoff run. So why not get, a really valuable pick out of it? So he gets that first rounder, and then on that same token as well, I believe he gets another player here as well. We go to look at the trade itself. And, Dak Prescott, who I mentioned originally. I thought there was another player in here for some reason. So, but yeah, you get Dak Prescott. He's obviously starting caliber quarterback week to week. He's 5th in the league so far in scoring this season. He's doing great. He's a multi-talented quarterback. He can run the ball as well as throw the ball, and he's leading Dallas to some success there. Maybe a little bit of regression here in his second year, but, that's to be expected after a rookie campaign like he had. And I think most have confidence that he's going to be able to do really well in the NFL. So, and that's going to translate to fantasy success. So overall, grade-wise, can look at it 2 ways. Maxx gives up a first rounder, but he gets a talent that, could prove to be I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for Doug Martin to be a top 10 running back, even with the games missed. It's a possibility. It's going to take a lot of production, but he has shown in the past that he has the ability to do that. And he could be one of those pieces that puts Maxx over the edge and gets him back into playoff contention. You could say he kind of is in playoff contention, given that he's only really a game behind. But it'll take some work. He's got the running back core to do it, though, with the running backs that he has, especially once you get through those bye weeks and you have everybody available again after, I believe, week 10 is the last week of byes, maybe week 11. Once you get past that point, you're in great shape to finish out the season with your whole roster intact, barring injuries. He's going to be in a really good position to make a really strong playoff push. For this trade, I'm going to give Maxx an A-. I think the only thing here is that you take some risk in taking on Doug Martin, who's had some injury history and some inconsistencies coming off of those injuries, giving a first-round pickup for him. It's a gamble in a way, but it's a bold gamble, and it's one that could really pay off. For Brian, I'm going to give him an A for this trade to be able to get that first-round pick for a guy who, has those uncertainties, as mentioned. That's great work, and you get a starting caliber quarterback in return. So I think it's a great deal for both sides. It's really interesting to see a trade like that happen, especially with somebody who doesn't really trade very often. So great work on both ends for this one. Really interesting to see that one come through. In the meantime, we also had a pretty minor trade. Maxx gave up J.D. McKissick to Kevin for Jamal Williams, rookie running back in Green Bay. Williams hasn't done very much so far, but he is a rookie. He's got some potential. McKissick had the one big game in week 4, came back down to earth last week, didn't do too much, but, just kind of not a handcuff swap really, because they're both in situations where the running back situation on those teams is either by committee or kind of just uncertain on who's going to get the carries from week to week. But, a little bit of a value swap there. Not really going to put a grade on that one because there's not really too much changing hands value-wise or starter material-wise, but interesting trade for Maxx and Brian. Again, A- for Maxx and an A for Brian. Thanks for watching, guys.